So we've begun our recording, everyone, and we'll be starting the meeting. So hi, everyone. We are here today to provide further information regarding the proposed development located at 742 Bayfield Street North. We are representing the Ontario numbered company 2252841. And the structure of the meeting is that we'll first present myself and my colleague Kevin Bouchard, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask questions and provide comments. So to begin, we would like to begin with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land that the proposed development will take place on is on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. The Wendat and the Haudenosaunee nations have also walked on this territory over time, and we recognize more than ever the importance of honoring Indigenous history and culture, and are committed to moving forward in spirit of respect and good health with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and our community as a whole.
Sure that people can see the screen.
So next, we'd like to introduce our consulting team. So for archaeology, we have Irving Heritage, and that's Tom Irving. With engineering and traffic, we have Tatum Engineering. And on the line, we have Nick Millington to answer questions about civil, and Dave Perks to answer questions about traffic. We also have Cambium on environmental to answer questions about that discipline. And for planning, we have myself, my colleague, Kevin Bouchard, and Darren answering questions regarding planning. We also, our surveyor is Rudy Mack, and my colleague Kevin Bouchard will be presenting now.
Okay, I just want to check. I have a note here that we had a wrong image. Is the image illustrating, if someone at Darren, you could get back to us, Darren Bella, who's the president of the company, just confirm that the image is looking good. He says looks good.
Looks good,
great.
everyone.
Thank you. Let me introduce myself again. I'm Kevin Bouchard. I'm a senior associate with IPS Planning Consulting Limited, and I've been involved in the land use planning industry for about 35 years. So just giving you a bit of background, involved in a number of different types of review and approval processes, in the environmental and planning fields. I'd like to talk to you a bit about the ministerial zoning order process that we are involved in on behalf of our client. And the MZO process is a process that ultimately culminates in the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing passing a zoning order or a zoning bylaw that would permit the use, proposed uses on a particular property. So there is a process that's involved, formally described on the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing website, so you can access that to understand the detail of this process. But there are a couple of things that I want to talk about in this process as we start down this path and with you in this discussion. The Minister's zoning order process has been recently modified to include the Community Infrastructure Housing Accelerator Program. So that's a mouthful. And there's a process description, as I said, on the MMAH website. And behind our application, and perhaps moving our application forward, is the provincial objective to build and approve and build 1.5 million homes by 2031. So the province is committed to housing, and part of the vehicle in providing that housing is the Infrastructure Accelerator Program. And what it allows applicants such as ourselves to do is to make site-specific applications through the respective municipality, and with consent of the municipality, request that the minister issue a zoning order. So this is not a top-down provincial program, and in fact, it's bottom-up, initiated from the landowner, in this case, the Ontario Comfort Company, who we know as Paul Sadlin, and then moving through the discussions and consent approval for the with the municipality. Now, if the municipality does not agree with the process, does not agree with the application, then it is simply in a position of not referring. It's simply in a position of not referring the matter to the minister for a zoning order, and then the process will stop. So this is a consensus-driven process with the municipality, looking toward, in our case, the acceleration of housing, attainable and affordable housing in the community. So I'm going to sort of pause just for a moment there. Now, there are additional steps that we need to include in this process.
Want that achieved in it now, or just put it on top of yours?
And one of them is that we undertake Indigenous consultation. So this application is being reviewed and discussed with the First Nations community. They will have the opportunity to comment directly to us or the municipality or the province in terms of the appropriateness of this application. Tonight's meeting is a public information meeting. It's held by our firm, IPS. This is not a municipal meeting. And the purpose of the meeting is to discuss the proposal and that we brought forward in this community. In the next step of this application or this application review, council will receive an information report from its staff, and ultimately it will make a decision respecting the application. And the decision is in the form of a request to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for a ministerial zoning bylaw to implement the application. Now, the municipality can attach conditions of approval to the application, so it isn't a one-stop process. And those conditions of approval may relate to draft plan of subdivision conditions or other conditions that they see fit going forward. So we're really at the beginning stages here of a discussion with the community and the municipality. The minister, when he receives the application, or request, I should say, from the municipality, then has the ability to review it, accept it, reject it, or assign conditions. So very much it's a process that's under review by a number of parties as we go forward in the review and approval process. And again, it's not a top-down process in as much as it starts in the community and then the request is made from the community to the minister. Maybe I could go to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the vision statement for Springwater Village. And the zoning order will permit a broad range of uses, from housing to condominium to convention center to medical use facilities, medical facilities. And it's featuring, if you will, mixed-use buildings, open spaces, a trail network for recreation, a vibrant farmers market. And in doing so, it's meant to enhance the facilities for Springwater residents and to build on the amenities and attractions in this community. We are focusing on medical facilities as a priority in this proposal because we feel and have understood that these services are much needed in the existing community. So let's talk about key components of this application. The first is diverse housing. I've already mentioned in my presentation this evening that part of the provincial objective is to provide additional affordable and attainable housing in the province up to 1.5 million, or including 1.5 million homes by the year 2031. The use of the MZO process is an exceptional process in the sense that it's intended to accelerate traditional development approvals in achieving this objective. There, in this proposal, and I'm sorry if it's a little distracting, there are people entering and announcing, and I don't know how to overcome that. I'm not sure if you can hear it as an audience, but I'll try and work through it. My apologies if it is disruptive. So in terms of providing diverse housing, we have identified and proposed several different types of housing, including a range of tenure and in terms of affordable and attaining housing that will meet the housing accommodation needs of a wide variety of residents. And attainable versus affordable are two terms that you'll see mentioned in this document. And attainable housing is meant to provide housing that can be acquired or by individuals in a 40% range of household income as a target, for example. Affordable housing typically would mean assisted or supported housing. So the range of housing that will be provided, as I will get into, will include full market housing. It'll include attainable housing, affordable housing, and rental housing. In speaking to community needs, we're addressing or identifying the opportunity to provide a medical campus featuring medical services and in mixed-use buildings. So that would be office and commercial, and potentially some residential buildings as well. The objective here is to provide convenient access to an expanded range of healthcare within the growing Midhurst community. As well, there will be the ability to provide assisted living facilities and provide a home environment and to accommodate the needs of a growing senior population. In terms of providing for a complete community, the daily needs of residents and visitors are going to be provided through a diverse range of uses that have been thoughtfully designed to encourage the interaction between residents and visitors, fostering a stronger community. And I'll speak to these a little bit later. This slide is showing you an aerial photo of the property. It's a total of almost 42 hectares, or a little over 100 acres in area. It has frontage on Bayfield Street, 610 meters as indicated in this slide. You can see that it flanks the Carson community to the north, and agricultural uses to the west and to the south as well. As indicated, the property is primarily given over to agricultural uses today. The official plan designation supports the agricultural use as it currently exists, as well as zoning for the property for agricultural use. When I'm looking at the surrounding context of the area, it becomes quite a bit more complex. You can see that the agricultural area that I just described is wedged between two urban contexts. Of course, Midhurst to the north is in Springwater, and of course, Barrie to the south. You can see that this slide shows a number of surrounding facilities, and Georgian Mall, East Bayfield Community Center, Barrie Sports Dome, Barrie Country Club, Springwater Aerodrome, parks and schools. It's quite evident to the south in Barrie, as well as community facilities to the north. It's quite evident that this is an area that's transitional between two communities, obviously Barrie and the township of Springwater. I've also shown on the slide in a light brown tone the proposed development area for Remington for their seniors care complex. And I'm showing that to illustrate that this is an area truly in transition. That landowners in this area are bringing forward applications that serve to build on the community in Springwater in terms of providing a complete range of services and support to that community. I've mentioned already the words transition and likely opportunity as well. The Bayfield Road corridor, it provides for transition of land uses between two urban areas and the opportunity for community infrastructure and diversified housing. In our proposal, we're bridging the city of Barrie and the township of Springwater through the provision of services like medical services and facilities, a farmer's market, commercial destination, attainable market and rental housing, assisted seniors housing, community parks and trails and gardens, which in this plan, and I'll share it with you in a moment, represent about a total of approximately 15% of the land area of the development, as well as affordable housing. This is the Springwater application. This is intended to assist the community in developing as a complete community through the provision of additional services and housing initiatives in the community.
There's one in here.
This slide is showing you a community master plan, and I'll work through this plan from Bayfield Road in the east to the west and provide an overview of the types of facilities. Now, again, in this application, it's intended that zoning ultimately provide for the development of the range of uses at the densities that I'm going to describe. But in some respects, it's conceptual in that a building may be, one use may be located in a different area of the site. So it's directive, it's not absolute. There may be changes to this plan that evolve through further discussion and as market opportunities present themselves. So the Bayfield frontage is going to be the most intensive area of use and development for this facility or for this proposal. It will include potentially a condo hotel, mixed-use buildings, and in mixed-use buildings might combine residential and commercial uses. Medical facilities are contemplated in this area, as well as higher density apartment buildings. The maximum height that we are considering in this area is 10 stories. We've also heard comments and questions about the need to consider transition of building heights adjacent to the Carson development or Carson subdivision area. And that's something we'll take in consideration as we go forward in the plan. Like you see, mentioning, perhaps I can just show is affordable housing, attainable housing, a farmer's market area, a community square, and then central recreation areas, parks and trails, a stormwater management system, urban agriculture, which would be allow for residents to use plots and plant gardens and cultivate those gardens, an extensive trail system,
Hi, Leo. I'm listening.
tiny homes, which is an interesting housing development concept where we have small houses that would be made available for rental or purchase and be utilized by residents. And it really is providing for a more affordable size and scale of development. I'm going to go into each of these areas in a little more detail as we go through the following slides.
I'm listening to it by phone.
So this is the Bayview front, I'm sorry, Bayfield street frontage. And as I mentioned, this will be the highest density, the most active area of the plan. And you can see that it would provide conceptually a range of buildings that might provide uses including residential, commercial, medical arts and facilities, et cetera. And the height, as I said, would be up to 10 stories, but not necessarily. We have a range of heights located in this slide to give an illustration of the types and scale of uses that might be considered. Access to the site is going to be provided to Bayfield Street. As mentioned a little bit earlier, we have undertaken a traffic engineering study on the site, and to understand what the implications of this development would be, not only obviously at this frontage, but for the whole of the site. And during peak hours, what we expect is that about 1,300 vehicles would travel per hour during peak hour days. And we would provide for a signalized intersection at Bayfield Street, and with turning lanes coming from the north with a right turn deceleration lane, and from the south with a left-hand turn lane as well. One of the aspects that we will consider is the alignment of this access to the proposed development for the Remington property. We haven't done that as of yet in this concept. It's a bit of a circumstance where the design and the concepts are both evolving, but I expect that we'll reach out to Remington to try and confirm. So it's an active, engaging area, pedestrian-oriented area that would greet a resident coming in or anyone coming in to utilize the commercial facilities as well. I would say as well, there's a second access that's provided at the south portion of the property, and those are the two accesses that we proposed fronting onto Bayfield Street. The next slide I'm showing you reaches into the core of this development, and where we have the higher density commercial residential uses fronting on Bayfield. Going into the core, we get into community-oriented, central community-oriented spaces that are public areas of assembly and recreation, extending through to a community garden, agricultural garden. It will be linked through obviously green and open space, but a trail network that will extend through the core and out through to the peripheries and surrounding the whole of the property area.
Just want to hear when people call in.
Oh,
the comment.
I'm showing you an illustration of the medical campus area, again in Bayfield, the hotel condo area, flexible units, mixed-use design buildings, multi-service, mixed-use medical buildings, apartment buildings, and integrated open spaces still involving in this core area. This slide is intended to show you four-season space, community space, including a farmer's market that would obviously provide an area for residents and the community to congregate and to engage in commercial activities and community activities as they would be undertaken throughout the year. Attainable townhousing units. This sector or these housing units, attainable housings, are intended to be available at a price that could be affordable on a market purchase basis. So it's not assisted housing, but it's meant to represent housing that is affordable to an income range where it may be to a mid-income range. So it could include stacked townhouses, it could include rear lane townhouses or standard townhouses. In total, we would expect that this range of housing would account for about 20% of the total housing stock in this community. Semi-detached and tiny homes. What we're showing here is as we've moved from east to west, is we're showing the agricultural area, and I'm going to point to it here, these small lots, and we're showing it surrounded by tiny homes and then by semi-detached and single-family homes. So we're seeing again the progression of housing types and the range of housing types that would be available as part of this development. I'm showing here in a bit of a ghosted version a stormwater management pond, and what I want to say is that certainly we would have controlled stormwater management activities on the site, or controlled stormwater management control on the site. We would meet pre-development drainage with in a post-development condition, which is a standard requirement in terms of development. That's the ends of my slides. What I'm going to do is open up the floor for questions. We have technical consultants who are available and will respond to questions. I'm going to ask that John moderate the calls, and I'm also going to ask that we allow everyone the opportunity to speak, and we'll try everyone will have that opportunity. But before you come back for a second set of questions, or maybe even a third, I'd like to try and allow everyone to speak on this call. So we'll open up the field for questions. Thank you very much for your for listening.
So I see that there's a question here. I'm not sure. I'm going to unmute the participants. 1 second.
How do you say Pim?
Well, if I could, I'm not sure everyone can read that. Is this the question that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you could read the question, John, go ahead, and maybe we'll start from there.
First question we have here is, can you please clarify if this entire development will in fact remain all within Springwater Township and not be annexed into the city of Barrie? Is there any possibility that these lands and the proposed development may become a city of Barrie annexation? So I'm going to defer to Kevin Bouchard.
Right. Okay, so I want to let you know that this is an application that has been made to Springwater Township. And it's an application that's oriented to what we believe are certainly needs and the opportunities for the township in terms of providing for additional uses to let's say fill out either gaps or provide for what we planners like to call the complete community. So this is an application that's directed at the township in Springwater. It preceded Barrie's request for a boundary expansion. We've not been involved in that discussion as a group, and this is not something that is perceived as a direction we're going. So it is I guess a made in Springwater application, and we intend and we would expect to continue on through the review and approval process with the township.
Okay.
I guess the second part of that question, is there any possibility that these lands and proposed development may become part of the city of Barrie annexation? Well, that isn't our discussion. What I would suggest is that that's a discussion between the city of Barrie and the township of Springwater in the province. Certainly, we're responding to an opportunity and a process that's been brought forward by the province to solve a particular problem, and that's the housing crisis we have in Ontario. And our client is bringing this application forward on a basis to respond to that issue and provide for that opportunity in terms of the development of this property.
Okay, I think we can go on to the next question. So Anthony Siracusa is asking, hi, John, can you tell us if services will come from Barrie or Springwater? So I'm going to defer to Nick Millington on this issue.
Well, maybe I could just say just briefly that that we have undertaken a servicing study, a functional servicing study for this property on a preliminary basis. And I'm going to turn it over to Nick Billington from Tatum in just a moment. But the upshot of that is that we can provide for stormwater management control on site within, obviously, the township. The water and sanitary services are not available to us, are not conveniently available to us through Springwater Municipal Services. And we would rely on the city of Barrie to provide for water and sanitary services. What I will also say is that we have not approached and had discussions with the city of Barrie in the provision of these services. And the point being is this, that really there is no project going forward unless the township of Springwater agrees that there is a project going forward. And so this is a discussion and a start of a discussion with the township, and ultimately in requesting services from the city of Barrie for water and sanitary, it would include the city. But that's not been where we've started. We do not have any assurance or commitment from the city of Barrie to provide these services. Our first step is to approach the township and with an application that we think addresses sort of market needs and housing requirements in this community. I can turn it over to Nick now. I think I've answered that part of the question that Nick may not want to take on. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, John. Yeah, so Nick Millington with Tatham Engineering. I mean, I think, Kevin, you kind of summed it up pretty well. We've completed a preliminary functional servicing study. The results of that study and our assessment to date demonstrate that we believe we should be able to service the site with sanitary services and municipal water services from the city of Barrie. The Barrie, their wastewater treatment plant, their water supply and distribution system, their water storage system all have sufficient capacity to handle significant future development. And their linear infrastructure should be able to handle the sanitary flows and the water demands. There may be some external improvements that would be required, but as Kevin mentioned, these would have to be discussed further with the city.
Okay. I think that's our response. Maybe we could go to the next question.
Tried it every way and it won't let me in.
So the next question here is from Patrick Glatt, it looks like. Can you please elaborate on the parking details for customers as well as permanent residents? Is it all underground?
Okay. It may be, or it may not be, or it may be a mix, Patrick. And this is the nature of the application, is that it sets a stage, if you will, in terms of the zoning approval, but it's going to invite other considerations for approval, perhaps a site plan application and specific site development applications, which will address parking, either in providing it underground or perhaps surface or some mix. It's not intended that this application reach that definitive conclusion, but rather to accelerate the process, if you will, in providing confidence that this application can move forward with the acceptance of the municipality and further investment and development in servicing and design and can take place at that time.
I think we can go with the next question here. With this development, what additional services will be required? Fire, police, ambulance, etc.
So this is we haven't gone through a review of that of the specific requirements, and that would certainly be part of this process in terms of understanding how that might be delivered to this site. So that, as I said, we're at the earliest stages. The development approval would be provided for zoning, but there'd be additional review that would occur at the municipal level in terms of development, specific development applications.
So we can go on the next question from Vanessa Craven. Who is the Springwater minister that will be reviewing this application?
Perhaps let me answer it this way, because I'm hoping that this is Vanessa, that this is going to provide some direction. So the application is first reviewed by Springwater Council, and the Springwater Council is accepting of this approach. It can request the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing at the province to issue a zoning order, potentially subject to conditions that would provide for approval of zoning order on the property. So there is no minister per se at the Springwater level, but it certainly would be your local council who would consider that approval.
And who would that be?
So the next question we have here is, what type of buffer will be provided between this development and the estate homes on Glen Huron? Obviously, there are concerns with having affordable and attainable housing backing onto estate homes. What will be done to protect the property values for existing homes? And this question is from Catherine Hill.
Well, Catherine, maybe I can display another slide. I'm certain that this we can provide a little bit more detail for you than we did in the general presentation. And so we're showing on this slide, of course, the subdivision to the north and the homes to the north. What we've identified, and I'll try and show this in this air photo, we can see the tree line that's existing. It's the darker green trees. And so that's there today. And what we are proposing is an enhancement in terms of this landscaping on adjacent to the property, as well as a trail system adjacent. So that trail system is also a setback, of course, as you were referencing in your question. And so you can see the range is about 55 plus and minus meters from the property line to the building facade of the housing. And this would be the front access to the building with the road in between. So this is the setback is about 55 meters from the property line, subject to screening. I'll get you to manage that, John.
It didn't answer the question though.
I'm sorry, let me take another look at the question here.
Sorry.
You just proposed like a tree line or a trail, but that's no answer to how you're going to protect the property values of the estate homes.
Well, it is an answer to the question in terms of the required setback, and I have to tell you that in the many years that I've been doing this, I hear this concern, but I've never seen the economic study that says that there is that kind of impact ongoing. And so I'm trying to suggest to you that these homes, we've been sensitive, that in this situation, we've been sensitive to the relationship between the provision of homes against and the development against the existing homes in the area. So I think this is our response to you, is to provide roughly 53 meters or 155, 160 foot separation between those homes and a landscaped illustration. So I think that's something that is indeed a response to the concern that has been raised.
Will there be like a barrier wall put in between?
I don't think a barrier wall is reasonable or is required or appropriate. I think the screening is. I think what we want to do is to provide an access, a trail, but I don't think our situation, our circumstances, that it's necessary to provide a barrier wall.
Well, as long as that trail doesn't interfere with people's backyards, correct?
Correct. I think if the trail itself is going to be set back, it won't be, there may be, I don't know, a chain link fence or something that could go between the two to provide control for access. But I don't think a barrier wall or screening of that nature is appropriate.
But nothing for privacy or anything like that.
Well, the privacy is really dealing with the landscape screening that will provide privacy.
And what would the landscape screening be like? You know, a couple of shrubs or something like that are like 5 feet tall, or should it be a taller
Well,
trees?
well, there's already screening there provided, and so in the existing a tree line that's there, and it would be augmented through planting. And we haven't provided
Right,
the
yeah.
details, but that would certainly be something that we would be sensitive to.
I understand the trees, but the trees are there, but there's nobody back there, so there's the absolutely perfect privacy as it is right now. But if you take the trees down to build a trail and housing, then, you know, there's nothing. So most of the
But-
trees are on that property.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to relate to is that we would not be taking the trees down. There's no intention to remove the trees that are there and existing on the property, and they would be retained. And in fact, they would be augmented.
But those current trees are on Glen Huron property, are they not?
No, they're on Sadland property right behind us. So
They would be
they're-
retained.
And well, that's like a 5-acre lot of trees, so that's absolutely not going to be retained. That'll be taken down to build the townhouses.
No,
There's only maybe 5
No,
or 6
I'm
trees.
a bit
per lot.
confused. Maybe somebody can explain this to me, but the trees that are the large trees that separate the Glen Huron estate properties and the farmer's field, they are property of the Glen Huron residents, are they not?
Not all of them. 90% of them are on the agricultural property, not on the Glen Huron side. At least on my piece, anyways.
I can't speak
just
to
to clarify,
individual properties, but I can sort of reiterate that the intention would be to retain the trees on the property line, and that certainly would be a requirement. And then to augment the planting to provide, you know, a landscape setting. And for the residents, that would provide screening.
Nothing stopping trespassing.
And what
if
type of
if I-
trees are we talking about? Because the trees that are there now and the aerial photos that you're showing were taken during the summer. So right now it's fall. If you were to drive along Glen Huron and look back, it's pretty much bare. You can see directly into the field that's there. So these new trees that you're looking to put in there, will they be evergreen trees so that there's a permanent privacy? Because it's elevated and whoever's walking along that trail will be able to see down into those yards, and there's nothing stopping somebody from coming off of the trail and into somebody's backyard.
Right. So we haven't gotten to the point of identifying the types of trees. But as part of these comments, and this recording is being, or this meeting is being recorded, we'll certainly be aware of the concern that you've raised, and certainly looking at the variety of trees that would provide screening appropriately for the residents adjacent would be considered. So as we go forward in the further development of this application.
So the townhouses that are proposed to be backing the Glen Huron Drive or the north part of that lot, are those all rental houses or will it be purchase housing?
Well, actually, they're fronting the street adjacent to, and if we can go back to that sketch, I'll just, so you can see that this is a right of way that I'm showing here. So these townhouses would be the front doors of these townhouses, right into that area, and then of course you have the 50 or so meters, 55 meters separation between the two. The maintenance of the existing tree line and the augmentation of that tree line, and that's shown here conceptually.
But you didn't answer my question. Are they going to be rental houses there, or are they going to be for sale houses to private individuals?
So it could be both. It could be both. It could be a rental or someone could buy it and rent it out, and but it's intended that they be attainable houses, meaning that they would be for purchase, and then someone may rent them out. So they're not
Right.
assisted
And that'd be
housing.
like geared to income housing type thing.
No, so that's not the intention in that location. What we're trying to buy, and it's not to say that that won't be provided in some circumstances. The when I say affordable housing, it's intended to refer to people, let's say, who would require assistance to maintain either rental assistance, let's say, to maintain that house of some kind. That's not necessarily attainable. Means that it's in the more achievable range for people who have a moderate incomes, household incomes.
Yeah, so assisted or geared to income, basically. In a roundabout sense, affordable housing.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. You're breaking up a bit.
So it'd be like government subsidized. So if they can come up with a little bit of money to pay the rent, and the government subsidizes the rest of the rent. That's what that was. That's what I'm
in the town.
understanding.
I'm not talking about assisted housing in the townhouses. But someone may rent a townhouse to someone else. You asked me if it was rental. I think I've covered your question. If you don't mind, I'd like to give the opportunity for others to move on if I can. Thank you.
Yep.
So the next question here we have from Rick Codwa. I reside in the subdivision at the south side of Bayfield Street and Carson Road. I have 2 questions. This development will create significant traffic in the area in addition to the current subdivision being built further south on Carson Road near Wilson. Will there be proposed reductions in the speed limits on Bayfield Street? And 2, given the significant services required in Springwater for this development, will it increase taxes for current residents?
I think, and the first part of the question, I think I will turn it over to Tatum so that they can perhaps give a high-level overview of the traffic impact of this development. I think that will start there.
Yeah, Dave Perks here. We took a look at the traffic. So yes, there is quite a bit of traffic generated by the site. Most of it will be heading south into Barrie. In terms of speed limits, we didn't get into that at this stage, but it's likely that that would be recommended given the increased density along the road. So it's 70 kilometers an hour across the frontage of that site now. I imagine that will be a recommendation to drop that given the additional traffic that's going to be entering and exiting the site there. Although it hasn't been specifically looked at yet, I would expect that as part of the comprehensive TIS that gets completed.
Thank you, David. And we'll be answering the second part of the question.
So the question is relating to the increase in taxes for current residences. And I don't know that I want to speak for Springwater definitively, but certainly in Ontario, the development charges that are exacted by municipalities are intended to cover the incremental costs associated with development. So certainly the services that are required to support this development would be constructed by the developer at his cost and not at the municipal cost. Soft services, libraries or policing or other are something that the municipality would recover through the use of development charges. That's the practice in Ontario. I might go to the next question.
So Patrick Glatt, ongoing developments within Midhurst have a population density of roughly 35 to 50 people per hectare. What is the assumed population density for the proposed development?
Yeah. So the assumed population density would be quite similar to the upper range. So that might be in the 40 to 50 persons per hectare. It's not achievable in policy today that you could put something in that's really lower than that. So I think that's where we are today in recognition of the need to provide a variety of housing types and forms in this province. So typically you would see something in the range of about 40 to 50 people per hectare.
So Jonathan Santos, the next question here, can you perhaps give us a few specific examples of locations in other cities where developments of this size exist, especially in such close proximity to residential neighborhoods, that would assist us in understanding how a development of this magnitude will impact our area?
I'm going to suggest to you that this is not an unusual form of development. It only in the sense that there's a higher orientation towards open space and community facilities and services. But I would direct you, and it's an easy drive if you were to take a look at it, the relationship between Newmarket and East Gwillimbury, and you'll see a very similar kind of I'm going to say symbiosis, where you have more intensive commercial and residential development along Yonge Street, and as those communities meet. So I think that would give you an illustration of the relationship, a similar type relationship between communities. But having said that, I want to be very careful because this really isn't a cookie cutter that we're proposing for Springwater Township. What we're doing is we're identifying what we think is a need that's going to fill a gap in this community, particularly related to medical services. It will be very different from the historic type of development, which is automotive related, that occurred along Bayfield Road. And this is more community oriented, more diverse, and providing for a range of needs in that community, from medical to commercial to residential. So it's really targeted to Springwater. And so it's difficult for me to say, well, this happened here and it's exactly the same.
I think we can move on to the next question here from Carolyn. Is the intent of the secondary plan to protect the character of the existing Midhurst community, but limiting development potential within the existing neighborhoods, and by providing a transitional buffer of low density housing on lands that are in proximity to the existing neighborhoods? Please explain the transitional buffer.
Okay. I'm not sure that I'd call this a buffer at all, and maybe I'm not understanding the question particularly. But the particular use that we're providing is recognizing that there are needs that Springwater requires in terms of its growth to establish and continue to develop as a complete community. And those needs are relating to the medical facilities we've described, and to the range of housing that we provided, and other amenities such as the farmers market and commercial area. So when I'm speaking to a transition, I'm recognizing that there are two communities already existing, and that there's a urban area that is pending development between the two communities. And so this is the transition that I'm speaking to. And I don't think that it's a reasonable or appropriate land use strategy to retain these lands as agricultural lands in the long term, particularly given the priority that the province has in promoting the additional housing, requiring additional housing, and promoting the development of 1.5 million residential homes or units by 2031. So in part, the land use is being promoted by provincial policy and the need for housing in the province. The proposed land uses are being promoted by the need for, as we perceive, community facilities, by the need for and the appropriateness of community assets, parks, the farmers market in this development as well. So transition is transitioning between two very different communities today, and but I think what's driving the uses is really the needs as we perceive them and as our client perceives them for Springwater's to develop as a more complete community.
I guess we'll go on to the next question from Paul Fleming. He wanted us
just
to
a minute.
describe the medical campus. So maybe when we want to go back to that slide.
Yeah, if we could go back to that slide. So one of the aspects that we're trying to bring forward is trying to resolve what we perceive as an opportunity for additional medical facilities in the Springwater community, which I understand will grow to in excess of 35,000 in persons in the planning timeframe. And part of responding to those needs is making available the opportunity to develop medical or mixed-use facilities in the community. Now, we don't have a list of facilities that we are intending to place at this point, but we have provided the capacity in terms of an opportunity for a collective development of these facilities at this location. So a critical mass, if you will, that would allow a range of medical facilities to be brought forward. And we think to the extent it's needed or required, it will support and be congruous with the Remington proposal that for a seniors community across the other side of Bayfield. So I think that's really the basis of what's driving that aspect, and identified in our mind an identified community need that we would like to put in as an opportunity, or place as an opportunity, and include as an opportunity in this project proposal and development.
So the last question here, I believe it's also from Paul Fleming. Have you made provision for employment lands?
Only to the extent, and I would say moderately, only to the extent that there are commercial uses that are included. This isn't an employment area, of course, and managing the compatibility between, a full employment use in traditional employment industries and residential use would be difficult. However, the use of the inclusion of a commercial market facility, of a medical facility, or perhaps a pharmacy, there will be a range of commercial and employment uses that would be included. But I think the caution that I'm just putting around that is that we'd want to ensure that the uses are reasonable and compatible with the residential uses in the area, and more particularly will serve the residents in the area. So that it's something that they can draw on as they go about their lives.
I guess we can move on to the next question here from Carolyn. Why are 10 stories being proposed as opposed to Midhurst's secondary plan, which states 6 stories? Given such extensive development, the 50 people per hectare seems impossible. It seems more 140 to 150 people based on 2.5 people per household, assuming 2,000 homes.
All right. So the range of the housing, I mean, we're looking at Bayfield Road, and it provides the opportunity to achieve those densities. Is really the answer from a planning point of view. In terms of a community, it's I think one that we can integrate that scale of development along Bayfield Road, and we can integrate it as part of this community. Now, I wouldn't expect to see a series of 10-story buildings. I think you're going to see a variety of buildings in terms of offices, in terms of residences, in terms of heights. So I don't believe that it's going to be, that kind of solid character in this area. So you'll see that variety. So 10 is certainly providing the upper range. 6 is possible, and perhaps probably more appropriate if it were an office use, or more achievable in an office use, given market conditions that prevail.
Okay, can move on to the next question from Catherine Hill. What is a hotel condo?
Well, a condominium, it's really just that. It's a mix of two uses. It can provide for hotel use in a number of floors, and it may be 3 or 4 or 5 floors, and then above that there would be condominium ownership of dwelling units. So it's simply providing flexibility in terms of the building use.
The next question here is from Vanessa Craven. Is there a market demand for tiny homes? Where else do these exist in Springwater or very currently?
I think that there is a market demand, and this has been brought to us through our client, and tiny homes are professionally built. That's what they're in. They can be, 8.5 feet wide, so call it almost 3 meters wide, and 13.5 feet tall, various lengths, 20, 22, 26, 28. I don't have a specific reference for that, but I can get back to you and provide you that reference.
Okay, so we can move on to the next question from Paul Fleming. Is it possible to access a PDF which describes the proposed development? Absolutely. If there's anyone that wants to have the staff report or any other additional material that they would like emailed to them, you can put your email in the chat or email I believe that we had put it up previously on the slide here. So you can email info@ipsconsultinginc.com and we'll certainly get back to you. Okay, now anyone that wants to ask a question can raise their hand using the raise your hand function, as you can see here. And I will go through people that are raising their hand one by one. So first, I would like to have Thomas McCausland.
McCausland, yes. So I'm a bit confused here on one item. So we keep mentioning Springwater Township, but yet some of the services, water and such, you're expecting Barrie to expand on. Is this Springwater? Is this Barrie? Is this a joint venture? Can somebody elaborate on that? Because I am absolutely confused here.
So there's the process of going through is a bit of a stepwise process, Thomas, and there is no application until we make the application to Springwater Township, and the application won't go further than our request unless there's acceptance by the Township Council, and so that's sort of the next step, and then. When we've done our preliminary analysis, we've discovered that the most achievable way of servicing this development, if we are looking for this type of development versus that which may have historically occurred in the township, we are going to require municipal services that cannot be provided through the township itself, and so. This opportunity is really only achievable if we collaborate between we see collaboration between the two municipalities. Now, we haven't approached Barrie at this point in time, and And in essence, we need to understand whether or not the township is even interested in what we're proposing. We think what we're proposing is really quite exciting and is going to be an asset to the township. But it's one step at a time. And I appreciate that the full package isn't in place, and it can't be until we have that conversation more formally and completely with the township.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, so we can move on to the next participant, Vanessa Craven.
Hi, I'd like to understand how the plan was put together. Were there residents consulted in the surrounding neighborhoods, mainly Carson? As you heard, there are concerns about the tree line and other areas. So question is, have they been consulted? I don't know if they have, feels like not. Second, where can we formally voice our concerns?
So, so the plan was created, or principally created, by our firm, IPS, and we have design personnel who have gone through obviously formal training and education that supports the kind of the development and preparation of concepts and going forward. So the consultation process that we're going through today is part of that process now, to put something out into the community and achieve and have a dialogue of what we're proposing. And that dialogue will include not only residents, but it will include members of council and the community, and also other persons such as Indigenous First Communities as part of this review discussion.
So have residents been consulted? You haven't answered my question.
Well, we are consulting with you now, Vanessa, and we are open to continuing to having a dialogue through your questions and comments on this proposal.
Okay, so have you taken down what has been shared in this meeting today with actions?
Yes, this meeting is being recorded.
Okay, again, I don't feel like the question has been answered, but I will write in.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. So next, could we have Glenn Marks speak? He's raised his hand.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for the information this evening. Two quick questions. Number one, you mentioned the benefit to Springwater Township for the community. So I'd just like to understand a little bit more what that benefit would be, because you mentioned all the traffic would be going into Barrie. And then the second part that I'd love to learn a little bit more about is the consultation with Indigenous people. How is that done? And when is that done? And who is it done with? Thank you very much.
The benefit that we're really ascribing to in this proposal is to accelerate and advance the housing opportunities and options available in the township. In addition to that, there are other incentives or opportunities that are being provided, such as the community benefit facility or the community facility of the farmers market, and in community area, the extensive park trails system as well. So in terms of development, it's in part, some of it is in part community facilities that we're providing in terms of open space and in the community market. But the other part of it is building the kind of community that is required in terms of providing a range of housing that's going to attract a diverse group of residents as well, in terms of a range of population in the community. So they will be living in tiny homes, they will be living in townhouses, they'll be living in apartments, they'll be living in single family homes as well, and enjoying this community. So that's the appeal, if you will. And part of this as well, as I said, is responding to the provincial initiative to provide for housing. And I think it's important that all municipalities, share in that initiative in delivering that additional housing required for this province. The second question, I'm sorry.
Sorry, could you repeat the second question? If you'd be able
Yeah,
to?
the second question was just in reference to the process of consultation with Indigenous people. When would that happen and who would that be with? Thank you.
So it is ongoing, and so it occurs in a couple of different ways. So we've hired a First Nations consultant, and we've undertaken an assessment, preliminary assessment of the property, and we are going to share. We've shared that with this, or are sharing that with the First Nations communities, and we'll meet individually with First Nations personnel to discuss this project and proposal and receive their feedback. So that will occur and is occurring as we move through the process.
Okay, I think we can move on to Stephen. Could you please ask your question?
Yes, thanks, guys. Yeah, just along the lines of consultation and moving forward with that awareness, public awareness and consultation with those of us in the immediate neighborhood, is it likely then that we will have continued communication with you and further input like this moving forward? I think that's really important. The reason being is this meeting was sort of happenstance. I only found out through someone in the neighborhood who said, oh, by the way, were you aware? And so many of us are not even aware of this meeting. And it is concerning that there's so much major activity going to be proposed and we're not even aware. So I guess the quick question here is, yes, will there be ongoing communication with this sort of a input venue that we will continue to have in through the process with either yourselves and or the community and the municipalities involved?
So I think that's certainly possible, and it was not on the agenda, but it is, as the comment comes back, and if there is an interest in doing that, we'll certainly reach out to you at the next stage in the approval process, the review process. So we can do that, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
I have a question about the sewage system and stuff. The people that are backing onto Carson and on the north side of the development, will they be forced into hooking up into the sewage line? And if it is, I mean, that's a huge cost to the homeowners.
We haven't given any consideration to that.
Sorry?
Sorry, we haven't given any consideration to the requiring of additional hookups to this facility.
Right, because my brother was kind of involved in something like that, and the cost for him to hook up to, and he was forced from septic into municipal, and it was like a $20,000 cost incurrence to him. So, I mean, that's a pretty big concern for anybody that's backing onto this development if they're forced into removing their septic system and hooking up to city sewage.
Kevin, I can add a little bit to that if you'd like. So, sorry, it's I lost your name, but based off the current plans based off the current plans that we've completed as part of the preliminary engineering stage, I wouldn't anticipate that we would be extending services along the frontage of any of those existing homes. So I wouldn't expect that to be a requirement.
Expected and has happened are two different things, though.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if the township has a different idea, but I mean, part of this also would come down to if we're servicing through Barrie, that likely would complicate matters for connecting to other residents. But again, everything north of the proposed development, like we wouldn't be proposing to complete servicing works outside of our site area. So the system is relatively internal to the proposed development, and then it either pumps or has gravity flow south to the city.
Okay, my other question is, like you have stormwater management systems. What are the fail-safes put in place in case of flooding or whatever for housing that is on the lower end of the spectrum?
Yeah, so we would be implementing, best practices and stormwater management design criteria in accordance with municipalities' requirements, and similarly with the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change and Parks. With regards to fail safes, stormwater management designs, including your stormwater management ponds, they always have emergency overflow routes that direct water to a safe outlet. So we would ensure that those were incorporated into this plan to protect adjacent properties.
Right, and are there insurances allowed for failures of that to the homeowners?
The emergency overland flow is the fail safe for if your pond system or your storm sewer fails. So we always ensure that any sort of spill flow is directed away from adjacent private property.
Yeah, that's in a perfect world, but we all know we don't live in a perfect world, so there are occasions that shit can happen. Pardon my language.
Yeah, certainly. It would go through a detailed design review and approvals process with the various approval agencies. So we would be providing best efforts based off our engineering responsibilities to protect the public to ensure that that wasn't going to be the case.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to have Jackie ask their question next. Jackie, are you there? I believe you're on mute. I think we can come back to Jackie. So next, Paul, if you had a question.
Hello, does that work?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay, one of the things that strikes me a bit odd about the proposal is that you've chosen to go through an MZO as the amendment. Why did you choose to do that route as opposed to, say, an official planned amendment?
Right. So the process certainly is one that's been brought forward by the province to accelerate development, timing and approvals, and where they can be agreed upon with the municipality and move forward. And so the rationale in that respect is in part associated with the ability to move more quickly. Now, in Ontario, and at least as it exists today from a policy point of view, the normal process would be to go through a municipal comprehensive review, which occurs every several years, and we went through one recently, and then enact that through an official plan amendment and a subsequent official plan amendment, etc. And so that process, in terms of wait time and approvals, can take anywhere from 8 to 10 years to achieve. And in the province, in its approach, has sought to expedite that process. And so we have this opportunity open to us if it is indeed acceptable to the Township of Springwater and in terms of moving forward. So ultimately, we would enter into the same kinds of agreements with the municipality in terms of subdivision and approvals, etc., to provide for the development. It's just only allowing this to happen at an accelerated pace.
So basically, it's the issue of speed, getting it done quickly. If I may ask another question.
Can I just respond to that? It's not only speed, it's also need, because we're in a housing deficit, a serious housing deficit in this province. And so to provide the province's view is that it's important to provide for the supply and enhance the supply. And this is their methodology for doing it, or their approach to doing it. And in ourselves, through our firm, we have multiple applications in municipalities that are seeking the same recourse as well. So it really has freed up, if you will, the administrative process. And need is really driving, and I think more than speed, if you will.
If I may ask another question? I understand the Planning Act requires you to have 10% employment lands, but I think I put a question to you earlier, and I don't believe you described anything by way of employment lands as part of the subdivision.
So I'm not sure which section of the Planning Act that you're referring to.
Are you a planner?
Yes. Oh, yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay.
So it wouldn't require, for instance, that every development that comes forward has a 10% employment component in it. So that's not a Planning Act requirement going forward. So and I think in answering this question or a similar question, and there've been a number of questions, I haven't tracked who's said what. But the issue for us is in traditional employment lands would be land use compatibility. So you wouldn't want to integrate a manufacturing operation, for example, that had either emissions or transportation issues, heavy truck transportation issues, as part of a residential community. You'd have compatibility issues. However, in planning, we often view sort of a softer side of employment to be, commercial activities or medical activities that aren't residential, of course, but they allow. And I think my answer earlier was that there would be an employment, because of the mix of uses that are contemplated, there would be an employment component associated with this use, but there wouldn't be in a requirement under the Planning Act that it be a certain percent.
Okay. Can I do one more? I'm a little skeptical about what you described as a medical campus. I found your answer really vague. Like it's almost as though you have no idea what the medical campus is all about. And it seems to me that that's the thing that makes your proposal unique, is proposing some sort of medical facilities. But from what I'm finding, that there's really nothing that you're describing.
Right. What I am describing is the opportunity and the intent to proceed on that basis. And so what we're putting in place as part of this application is a framework. So I can't tell you, and I am well familiar with medical facilities, but so that campus, it could be a mix of different types of uses that would support the community. And I can't tell you what exactly those uses are going to be because I don't control for that. All I can do in this application is make sure that we provided that opportunity for that to occur. And what I'm trying to achieve and what we're trying to achieve is the clustering or the concentration of uses so that they attract each other and so that there is a benefit to this community. So really my objective isn't to attract one medical specialist versus the other, but rather to develop a cluster, if you will, of medical uses that would provide for that to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we can move on to Carolyn.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. It's Corey. I just wanted to ask about the traffic study that was done. Are you able to elaborate on whether it was done considering the ongoing developments that are currently under development still?
Sure.
Yeah.
Over to you, Ken.
Oh, no, for a traffic consultant.
Yep,
Yep,
Dave Perks here. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave, if you could, thank you.
Yeah, so we did our volumes based on what was considered in the master plan that was done with Midhurst, which included a lot of the development up in the Midhurst secondary plan area. It's that sort of was where we got our projections from. And that was preliminary at this stage, the traffic study. So, but the township would request that we would consider those volumes. So, and in any studies that go forward, for sure, any developments that have come online, any that have come online since we've completed this study would also be included in that in any future studies. So, yeah, it's sort of although it's preliminary in nature, it did include a number of the developments that are online already.
Okay, and then can you just elaborate again on, so it sounds like you would be adding like a turning lane essentially. Is that the idea? There wouldn't be an actual intersection or anything? Is that correct?
No, where the access points are, one of the access points, I think its location, although again, the plan may be refined somewhat going forward, but it would be opposite development on the east side of Bayfield. At least one of those intersections would be signalized, and from our review, you would require left turn lanes to serve both access points, actually, and perhaps even right turn lanes in the southbound direction at each access point too. So there would be improvements that are required based on the volumes. And again, going forward, we would also have this reviewed eventually by MTO, and they would also have some things to say with that as well. But yeah, there would be an intersection, a signalized intersection, at least one of the access points.
What's the other access point? Would that be Ant Street or?
No, it would be north of there. So it would be its own access into the site. It wouldn't be opposite anything. It would just be sort of a secondary access to some of the residential area. And that's based on it would be off of Bayfield Street.
So two access off of Bayfield.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we can
Okay, I
move
just
on.
had another question. I appreciate that about the traffic. The other one, I know we talk about this housing crisis and supply of homes, and I just was curious if you reviewed any of the ongoing developments to see the amount of available properties still in these developments and what price point you're expecting for your development.
No, I haven't reviewed the existing development in Pinterest. What we've done is simply provide this additional opportunity and discussion with the township to bring this forward. So we haven't this isn't market-based, essentially on the existing supply. But what we're confident is happening is we're looking at a range of housing that's going to extend and expand the range of affordable and attainable housing in this community. And I think that's the objectives that we've adopted.
Is the developer? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of say, like, and then the primary use of all this additional features for the community would essentially, it seems like, be for whoever's gonna live in this area, like within the development, I should say. Like, I don't see parking. When we kind of ask a question about parking, it's like, maybe it's underground, maybe it's not. How does that allow for the rest of the community to utilize this space if we don't have any parking lots? Like, I don't see a single parking lot in the plan. And if they can't go underground, does that mean that we lose the green space to allow for parking? Or how would that, like, once they get approval for the zoning and the number of units, what is the first thing to go if we have no parking?
So the zoning is really working out the uses that are being permitted in the concept and the development opportunities. The next stage of the review would be to develop the site-specific development standards for each part of the project, and that's where I was heading in my earlier comments. And it may be underground or it may not. And in some respects, they may be more dependent, and I might turn this back to David Perks for his comment on transportation demand. But essentially, we're not building exclusively for cars. And so it might be intended that someone wanting to access the farmers market or some other community aspect would take a bike or walk or do that. So it's not intended that everything be auto-driven. I think in today's perspective, and we're deliberately making this community sort of accessible and to the surrounding lands and the ability to sort of navigate, walk or cycle throughout the whole of the community. So we're hoping that it isn't going to be as car dependent as your comments. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as your comments suggest. David, do you have something else you'd want to add to that?
I mean, it wasn't part of the traffic study per se, but it's certainly something going forward we would look at, different transportation demand management. And what that is just methods and measures that might encourage people to use alternative methods rather than a vehicle. And so those could be looked at moving forward as to what services are in the area, what could be introduced. Is there an option to link into the City of Barrie's transit? There's all sorts of opportunities there that would be explored to sort of trying, and this isn't just specific to this development. This is in developments that are happening in all over areas that are, especially urbanized areas or areas that are close to it, in terms of let's try and get a focus away from the private automobile and try and get things that are more sustainable or in nature. So it is something that we will look at.
So in regards to upgrades and stuff like that, transit accessibility and stuff like that, obviously, well, it's obvious, but who's going to be paying for that? Will the developer be paying for that? Will the builder, or is it going to be included in taxation?
David, I don't know if you want to start in on that, and I can finish if there's, and typically, I mean, what I'm thinking I'd like you to do is to talk about some of the incentives that developers do provide in terms of managing transportation demand, and then we'll carry on.
Yeah, so I mean, some of it comes down to and how they're funded. It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Some it's developer driven, some it's through development charges. But things like, for instance, if there's transit nearby, there'd be transit incentive cards or prepaid transit is one of the options. As far as in this is sort of up in the air. If it's a connection with the City of Barrie's transit, recognizing this is the Springwater, that would have to be negotiated probably with the City of Barrie. I'm not sure how that might happen, or it's too early to know, but there would need to be discussions there. But typically, the incentives are, it depends. Sometimes it's developer driven, and the municipality would require a developer to, okay, you're going to put this many bike racks, this much parking for bikes and things like that. You need to provide car share if there's car share service in the area, and it's on the developer. And then in other jurisdictions, it helps out with if it's the county or if it's the town or the city. They may help in other areas, but it really depends on what's there now. Like the City of Barrie is just getting into the TDM as we currently. So
I understand that, but I mean that would be a significant cost to Barrie Transit to supply more buses and drivers and fuel and all that other stuff to work that area. So obviously there's going to be a cost accrued with that. And somebody's going to have to pay for that somewhere down the line. Correct?
And that again would be through to, we don't know how that would happen. There would have to be conversations with the City of Barrie. We're not there yet. But it would just be there are costs associated with that. What those are in terms of extending a route a little bit north, probably not going to be as much as a brand new route or anything like that, but for sure, there are costs to be considered, and how those get shared would be up to further discussion.
Right. All right.
Okay. Could we have the next question from Patrick Glatt?
Yes, thank you. You can hear me?
Yes.
Great. So my question is regarding waste management. We're adding a lot of people in this development compared to, I'd say, the overall population of Midhurst. So is there any consideration to the landfill and the capacity management there? Has anything been discussed with those folks?
So waste management is obviously going to be a shared responsibility between the county and the township. So I'm going to suggest to you that whether it's recycling or disposal, that the initiatives that are going to be taken from the county would simply be extended to this community as they would any other developing community. I'm not sure if I caught your question properly, but I think that's the answer, is that the developer would certainly the development would certainly become part of that initiative, the initiatives of the county.
Okay, the main question is surrounding, will the landfill, right? So will the landfill have capacity to support all these new residents is essentially the question. Has that been discussed with the municipality already at this stage, or is that coming forth in a future stage, or at all?
No, there hasn't been a discussion with the municipality in terms of waste capacity. I've spent some of my career involved in waste management, and it wouldn't be typical that one site would drive a capacity issue or on a particular development, and the site isn't large enough to, I think, to create that kind of scenario. So I'm expecting that growth is going to be managed in a much broader context in the county, and that waste management facilities will be managed accordingly. So I don't think this site is going to be determinate.
Okay. And my second question is regarding our protected water in Springwater. So right down the street at Carson and Bayfield, it is a protected water zone. What is being done from the development perspective to ensure that the water remains protected in this area, because it is called Springwater for a reason?
Right. So the difference between this development and many developments in this area, of course, is that it's anticipated to be on municipal services, and so the potential for that impact is obviously greatly reduced. The other aspect is the control of stormwater management. And the control of stormwater management means also the treatment of stormwater management through managing the soil, the grit, and that would, be part of that discharge otherwise. So those two aspects, I think, are going to provide for, as they do in many developments, provide for effective management of groundwater resources.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So could we move on to Jean Heatings? If you could ask her question.
Yeah, Gene. Yeah, it's Gene Heading, actually. Thank you. Just my question pertains to the timelines. Apparently, we're trying to do this at an accelerated rate. I just want to know if you could enlighten us as to what the next steps will be and the timelines associated.
So that's an interesting question, because this is a new process in Ontario, and so it was easier for me to sort of identify what we don't expect the timelines to be, and that to be an 8 or 10 year period with an official plan amendment, perhaps a municipal comprehensive review. So I would hope that we would be in a timeline that gets us into 18 months in terms of a full approval of this thing. But I'm saying that in speculating. I'm saying that in speculating because we haven't had the full conversations with the township, and as they would follow with the city of Barrie, and so timelines will become more clear as we continue on through the process.
Okay, thanks. I got just a follow-up question relating to traffic. We've had some significant motor vehicle collisions at the Bayfield and Carson Road And they generally are high speed with catastrophic results. My concern is when they did the development at Carson and Bayfield, the two associated plazas, the MTO was consulted, and my understanding is they put the lights at the bottom of Carson and Bayfield, and they would not allow lights to be placed any further up the hill. Are you aware of anything such as that?
David, maybe you'll have some information. I don't have any information on that.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the just with the study. We were sort of at this point preliminary focusing on the access points. So we're not too well versed as what's going on at Carson and Bayfield. I do know where those lights are though. MTO does have different separation requirements as to where lights should be. The lights at this would be up at the top of the hill, quite a distance away from Carson. But I'm not aware of any restrictions based on the lights that are at the bottom of the hill. Not that I'm aware of. I can look into it, but at this point, I'm not sure.
Okay, and just if I may, one final more for clarification. So there's going to be no barrier separating the residents at Carson Road, Glen Huron Drive rather, and the new development. There won't be any fencing. It'll just be sporadic trees along that line. Is that correct?
So I think the discussion was around a wall being constructed, and there would not be a wall constructed. We understand the need to control for trespass, and so that may be something that could be considered in the form of a chain link fence, a 4-foot chain link fence, as you see, as a demarcating property boundaries. But we'll take that under consideration. But the screening is going to be provided through landscape. That's the intent. We don't think.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jackie, if you could ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I tried something different. I'm calling in versus on Teams. Anyways, my question is around, I know you had mentioned earlier, Kevin, around the collaboration of services between Springwater and Barrie. So can you elaborate on how the taxpayer dollars is divided in sort of a relationship like that?
And no, I can't give you a short answer of that. That would have to be negotiated. So and we're at the early stages or the stages of discussion with the township and their acceptance of this application and this concept and this proposal going forward, and would envelop the discussions with the city of Barrie as would be warranted and required to carry it forward. So it would be a discussion that would have to be worked out between the municipalities and to an extent ourselves. But what I did say is that the requirement for servicing costs, funding servicing costs, the extension of sewers or the extension of water, that would be a development cost, a developer cost. In terms of treatment, et cetera, or downstream, I don't have any further comments to make respecting the city of Barrie. I couldn't begin to make that comment. I don't know, Nick and Millington, whether you have any other sort of experiences with cost sharing that might illuminate, but I'm not sure that it's just so premature that we couldn't make any kind of guesstimate.
Yeah, I mean, specifically with regards to how the taxes are handled, I also couldn't comment at this time. I mean, any agreement or an agreement of this nature, it would be a cross-border services agreement that would have to be negotiated with the city. But again, we're early days and I need to engage in the city to advance those discussions. But yeah, the tax question is something that would come out quite a bit further down the line.
Just want to make sure if do we have any more.
It's Jackie again. I had also asked a question in the chat around the medical facilities because I'm still very unclear and what it sounds more to be like more as a sales pitch as a part of this broader plan. So just want to make that call out.
Okay. And I wouldn't go so, I wouldn't diminish it as a sales pitch. I think it's more of a recognition and looking to put an initiative forward to the municipality. And if there is uptake on the initiative, then it could be developed further. It's more recognizing perhaps a need and an expression of an interest and an opportunity to assist in fulfilling that need. And what that looks like is going to be shaped in further discussions. So I think it would be presumptuous in one respect for us to say, well, we're going to do these 7 things. And I think by leaving it open, there is some flexibility for it to be defined through discussions with the township.
Right. So with your medical offices or building or whatever, I mean, that can be open to pretty much anything considered medical, such as, I mean, worst case scenario, a methadone treatment center as per se. I mean, I don't want to sound like an ass, but when you get into subsidized housing and such like that, lower income housing, you sort of attract people like that. And then as a medical facility, there would be the opportunity for somebody to move in and say, okay, well, we'll open up a treatment facility here, and then that's just going to attract more, which is going to ultimately decrease the valuations of our properties around the area.
Well, and with respect, I really don't know how to respond to that comment. Maybe I'll just let it stand, but I really don't have a response to it, except to say certainly our intent is to provide a community-based facility that will support the needs of its residents. To go to methadone as an answer is not where we were headed. So I appreciate your comment, but I don't think I have a response to it.
It is absolutely an idea that can possibly happen, especially when you're putting in, low rent housing.
Well, I guess you may be prepared to
commenting on ideas of what you have for these medical facilities. Can you then elaborate on the specifics of what they are?
I think what I'd like to do is take that comment back rather than try and provide an off-the-cuff answer. But I'd like to take that comment back and respond to it as we go through the process. So I think if you'll allow me to do that, I would do that.
Okay, thank you. Could we call upon Stephen?
Yes, thank you. 2 parts to the question. First of all, I want to add your responses here have been very good insofar as you've been very calm, and I very much appreciate the way you've approached these answers. Thank you for doing that. I would like to just ask, what is the timeline expected for the application to be submitted to the township then? And then after that, what's the next step following that? Once the application's submitted to Springwater, what happens after that? Sort of the timeline. I mean, this is the first meeting. I'm just kind of wondering, is there going to be several more meetings where we have input and discussion, or it goes to the township, it's applied, they approve it, and we move on and steamroll ahead, like you had sort of said about an 18-month program here. So I just wonder if you have some clarification on that. Thank you.
Right. Okay, so let's start with the application date. So the municipality, the township has a formal application process, and that's really more of a protocol in terms of what the information they'd like to see or would have requested to see as part of this process. And so sort of a planning review. And we've heard about the traffic study, we've heard about the engineering studies, stormwater management, etc. So we are already in environmental. So we're already engaged in the process to date, and so it is ongoing. And part of the process is this open forum. And so what are the next steps? The next step is that ultimately there'll be a report, presumably, or ultimately prepared by staff for council for their consideration. And it could request additional information. It could request additional studies, and it could allow this application to proceed with some additional conditions of approval. So that may happen. What we'll do is we will provide a summary of the comments that we've had tonight. And this, of course, this presentation is recorded and will be available to council members and others to review. And we'll provide that summary of this meeting to council. And at that point, we may be requested to have additional discussion or follow-up as I committed to on the medical center information to support it. So I think there's some fluidity in this process is really the answer. I think is it Stephen? There's some fluidity in the process so, that will come back to us in part from council and their consideration.
So just to clarify then, when do you expect your application to be submitted to Springwater?
So the application, to be clear, the application of what we intended to do is already in place. It's in, and as of October 3rd, and just parenthetically, it preceded all of the boundary adjustment discussions that have come to light recently. So this was really formed over a period of weeks and months as an idea and developed, and then on a preliminary basis validated. That information will go to council. I'm expecting further discussions with staff or council, and then we will come back with in meeting their requests or their concerns.
Okay, Stephen, if it's okay that we move on to the next question.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Carolyn?
Yeah, it's Corey again. I just want to ask, like, I keep hearing Barrie. Basically, like, a lot of this seems to hinge on Barrie Transit, Barrie Services. And so my question is, but then everything relates back to Springwater in terms of being involved. It sounds like we haven't been in any conversation with Barrie yet. Is that typical? Like, at what point do you engage Barrie and be like, we're planning to try to approve a property to do this that hinges on using these services? Or why hasn't Barrie been engaged already, I guess?
Right. So the engagement really is a matter of being in the process to achieve this next step. So we don't really have an approval, or we don't have an approval from the town by any means at this point, from the township at this point in time. And I think our interest is in getting some sort of a sense from the township on their support or their interest in having this application come forward and continue to be developed. And at that point, we would reach out. So there's a prematurity, perhaps, that in approaching Barrie that I want to understand. I would want to understand that there's a consent and an interest in the township before we do. So it's really a stepwise process, if you will, of moving forward. And that's where we are in the process. Initially introducing this application and putting it, let's say, out there into the community for comment and review. And then moving to the next step with the town, and then potentially to the next step with the city of Barrie.
So once the town has their buy-in, I guess it sounds like, is that when after that it goes to, you actually like submit the MZO to the minister, or would it be you would then engage Barry before you submit to the minister for actual approval of
I think
the rezone?
in this instance, what we would probably do is want to understand what Barry's position would be in. And I think we'd want some direction from the township to so that we understand that there's interest in proceeding and having this dialogue. And the minister would only act if they received explicit direction from the township that this is something that they desire. So when that happens is really Barry's, or sorry, my apology, is really the township's decision. If they feel comfortable that this is something that's reasonable and appropriate and achievable, then they may move forward with that request to the minister. We don't make the request to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. That's not that's not how the process
that would come from
works.
the township.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and,
Do you have
and go ahead.
Do you have a date for your next meeting with council?
It's not set as of yet. I think we're sort of going through a stepwise process, and we would like to get through this process and sort of collect the comments and understand how that may shape this application going forward before we step. So we don't have a date, but I would like to do it in the near versus the far future, certainly, and keep the process moving forward. But I want to consider the comments that have come tonight.
How do we?
And there have been a few, and then sort of be able to respond to those with staff and council and others.
How do we ensure that we are updated with dates or potential timeframes? Like, is there a site that you have that kind of posts anything about this process? Or once you do pick a date, like how would I be able to keep informed?
I'll have to get back to you on that, because this is, at this point, it happens that it shifts over to the council process from our process. It becomes a council meeting and council discussion. So there would be some notification that is provided through the normal council proceedings of a meeting, and that's how the notice would be provided. It's not our meeting at that point. It's going to be the township's meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
will
now
township send out a letter to members of the area to respond or be in attendance at that point in time?
I don't want to appear that I'm evading the issue, but that's not my call. But it's certainly something that I'm sure that the council members will be watching this proceeding, and that may be something that they direct. So I can't speak for them, though. I can't. I wouldn't have the basis to direct council to do something, but that's certainly something that they might do.
Yeah. My other question is, I mean, if you're concerned about developing housing and stuff like that, then why are you proposing putting in a hotel condo? Why wouldn't it just be all condos rather than just a hotel? Or is that something to drive in further developers in to help?
Well, it provides, and certainly we've received some feedback that's something that is, and this is in conversations and over a period of weeks and months, that would be desirable in this community. So, and that is to have either hotel, convention, and capability in this community. It's something that is lacking. So there's a certain incentive side to this application, and I've mentioned a couple times that this is really a process that is a consent process. There's no appeal for us. We reach an agreement with the township, or we don't, and so there's that incentive that we would like to say, well, this is the kind of a facility that makes a positive, or a development that makes a positive contribution to the community in a number of different ways, and that's going to support the development of a complete community in Springwater. And so it's a bit of this and a bit of that. We're trying to understand where the needs are and how we can participate in fulfilling them as a way of getting consensus to bring this application forward.
Yeah, no, I totally understand, the ideas put forth and all that stuff. The green space for planting and stuff like that, I don't know, people predominantly are lazy and don't want to grow their own stuff. I mean, I don't want to sound, arrogant or anything like that, but
well, you're talking to a hobby farmer. You're talking to a hobby farmer, so maybe I'm on the other side of that issue.
I grew up on a farm, and I totally understand. I prefer to grow my own stuff. It's better, it's healthier, but most people are, I just want to go to the grocery store, buy a bag of chips and some oranges and a bottle of pop and be on my way. So
I hear you, but I think there's something else you get out of it. But I don't want to stray too much. I mean, you certainly wouldn't do it for commercial reasons.
No.
You might do it
hopefully,
for health and
it
connection.
takes off and people actually utilize it for what it's meant to be. But throughout my life, moving from a farm to the city to smaller communities, there are people that like to grow their own stuff, and there are a ton of people that would prefer not to do that. They don't even want to cut their grass. So just a bit of my input, that's all.
Is there anyone else on the phone? Because we know that you don't have a raise hand capability, so if you want to speak now, that would be great.
I'd like to jump in real quick then here. I asked the question in the chat, just still wondering, Midhurst Valley development that's going on now, can you answer if they are on sewer system or septic?
I believe that they are on a new sewer system.
A new sewer system. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
And then they're Springwater still, right? That's Springwater.
Yes.
Yeah. For anyone that's interested, you may want to maybe check out the Springwater Township meeting on Wednesday. I'm not sure the exact time, but there's a meeting being held on Wednesday, and I'm sure some of this might be topic. I don't know for sure, but for those of us that are quite concerned and want to have a better understanding of what's going on from the township perspective and whether or not City of Barrie is driving to annex this property, you may want to go to that meeting and find out a little bit more. There is rumors flying around that Mayor Nuttall wants to annex all of this property into Barrie,
including us in Midhurst.
Well, that's the scary part, right? That's what we don't know.
Okay.
I don't want to be
thank you,
Barrie
Stephen.
because their taxes are stupid.
Thank
you. So I think we've answered all of the questions in the chat. I don't know if I've missed anything. Many people have put in their emails, so I want to remind everyone to put in their emails. I think that's everything. I think we've answered everyone's correct questions. If anyone else wants to raise their hand, now would be the time. And if there's anyone on the phone that hasn't had an opportunity to speak, now would be the time. And we want to thank everyone for coming out and taking an interest in this development. And you'll definitely be hearing from us shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.